This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Pursue Fitness Sportswear. Delighted to be joined, as always, by Eddie Hearn. We're here at the Lomachenko-Campbell press conference in London.
It's not as always, is it? Because you're not delighted to be joined here, as always, by Eddie Hearn. You're not always joined by me, are you?
I'm delighted. I'm delighted.
Always delighted.
I'm always delighted. I don't know.
You didn't say that. You didn't say I'm always delighted. You said I'm delighted to be joined. That's what you should have done. You should have said I'm delighted, as always, to be joined by. But you said I'm delighted to be joined by, as always, Eddie. I think. If not, I apologise. This is my 46th interview, so I'm getting a little bit tired and delirious. So I apologise in advance for that, Robert.
That's okay, Edward. I'm delighted, as always, to be joined by Eddie Hearn.
You might have said that originally. if so, I apologise.
How you doing, Eddie? Been a while?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. I'm excited for the show. As a fanboy, even, to bring Loma here. But obviously, I felt like it was important for British boxing in a year where we've had a bit of stick, where we haven't made as many or brought as many big names to the UK. Excited for Luke Campbell. Baffled, really, that no one's given him a chance at all. And I know it's a massive ask, but I do really believe he's a great fighter with loads of ability, who's in the form of his life. But obviously that's a credit to Lomachenko, isn't it? That he is a genius. That's why it's sold out as quick as it has. And everyone's going to be tuned in to watch, probably once in a lifetime, really, opportunity to watch Lomachenko box in Britain.
You mentioned bringing Lomachenko over as such a coup for British boxing. In recent years, we've seen Gennady Golovkin, Alexander Usyk, going back a few more, Terence Crawford.
Yeah, I brought all those here, yeah.
You did bring them all here, well done. Where would you put Vasyl Lomachenko compared to those names? Is this the biggest name we've brought over here?
Yes, because, when you look at the past, certainly of our era, since I've been promoting 10 years, definitely the biggest name that's been brought over, because Golovkin was top 5 pound for pound. Usyk was top 5 pound for pound. Crawford wasn't, because he was just mandatory for Burns. Errol Spence was well thought of, but he was mandatory for Kell Brook. Lomachenko is the pound for pound number one. You can flip him up with Canelo, but he's edging it. So I think in that respect, yeah. Don't forget Tyson's boxed, in Scotland before, and Hagler's boxed Minter, and Ali's boxed Cooper and London. But right now, in recent history, the first time that the pound for pound number one has come to Britain to fight, and I've seen the response. Last night was crazy at York Hall. The way the tickets have sold show me that people are excited to see this.
Before we come on to the rest of the card, you had a show this past weekend in Mexico that I stayed up till the bleary-eyed hours of the morning to watch, Juan Francisco Estrada. I did enjoy it. What's next for Estrada? Talk of Kovalev-Yarde. I think I read something somewhere about potentially looking for the winner of the World Boxing Super Series at bantamweight.
He just, out of the blue, and his manager said to me, we'd like to fight Inoue. I said, well, you're mad. But the fight that they're contracted to fight, and the one we want to make, is Kovalev-Yarde. Yafai has agreed to that fight in principle. So is Estrada. So sort of December time is where we'd like to see that fight. I think it's a really good fight. I think Cal needs that breakout fight now. He's had a couple of injuries, a couple of back-to-back mandatories, and he now needs that mega fight, and that's the one, Estrada against Yafai.
Also saw Liam Smith take over with a stoppage win. When can we realistically expect to see him boxing over these parts again? Obviously, the last time we saw him was against Sam Egginton. Yeah. There's still talk about Kell Brook. Is that a realistic fight?
Jesse Vargas is another great fight. I really want to... Liam Smith's a big name in the States and Mexico because he's boxed Canelo and he's boxed Munguia. He was walking around Mexico. He was almost like a household name because the whole of Mexico stops for Canelo's fight. So I thought he boxed really well. I think he's got a great future still at the sport. 154, maybe even a move to 160 to be in that big middleweight mix as well. Looking to make his next fight in December. Could well be in the UK.
Final one on the card in Mexico. One of my favourite fighters, one of my favourite prospects, Shakram Girsov.
Yes.
Wonder Boy. First round knockout of Darlis Perez. Yeah. Sensational performance.
It was. Last time out, he fought a guy called Leonardo Tyler, or something like that. Yeah, I think so. Who's a really good seasoned fighter, and he struggled. Actually got stunned in the first round and won the fight, but it was quite close. Before that, he's looked absolutely brilliant. And again, against Darlis Perez, he looked brilliant. First round knockout, Darlis Perez. Major statement. So I think he learned a lot from there. Got a brilliant team around him with Vadim Kornilov and the world of boxing. Joel Diaz, great trainer. I like him a lot. You know, he's really dedicated, huge star in Uzbekistan. And I think he's going to really be a player at the 140-pound division.
We've done some bits with him in the past, and I know a fight that he's looking for, or he would like in the professional game, is the rematch with Daniel Ulusanov. Is that something that's on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, Ulusanov's up at 147. He's kind of got his first tough fight on the Devin Haney card in a couple of weeks. Good fight. You know, I'd like to see Giasov move up and fight a Chris Algieri or a Barancic, or, you know, those kind of level guys. They want to move him quite fast, which is good. And yeah, I think he's going to be a threat.
Back to this card, you mentioned World of Boxing. Alexander Povetkin returns to the ring against Hughie Fury. Really interesting fight, and I think it's the definition of a pick'em.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to say Povetkin's a favourite because of his pedigree and his wins, but he's 40. He's coming off a stoppage to Joshua. How much does that take out of him? Looks really well, to be fair. Looks fresh. Hasn't boxed for a year. Hughie Fury's not really the guy you want to go in with when you've been out for a year. But I think in Alexander Povetkin's mind, he's like, if I can't beat Hughie Fury, I'm not going to win another world title, so I should retire. Not here for the money, just here because he feels he can win the fight. And, you know, we know that Hughie can move around, and Peter's said a few times in this fight, you've got to... Hughie's got to show something different in this fight, and what that means is he can't just move for 12 rounds. He's got to stand his ground, he's got to let his hands go, he's got to get his respect. But also, Povetkin's good technically. You know, former Olympic world champion, gold medalist, very good fighter, good feet, good speed, good variation, good upper body movement. It's going to be tough for Hughie Fury. But if he was to win, you know, he blows the doors off the heavyweight division and becomes a major player.
Fight was announced fairly last minute. What can you tell me about drug testing for the fight? We've seen Alexander Povetkin have his issues outside the ring, shall we say. We've also seen the same with Hughie Fury. What's the drug testing for that fight?
So both guys have signed up to WBC VADA testing anyway. But as soon as the fight was made, both guys signed up for full additional VADA testing. I think it was 5 weeks, something like that. So not an ideal situation, but as I said, both guys fully signed up to the WBC random program, which although is not as extensive as the VADA testing that we commission, at least you're signed up to it. Do you know what I mean? So that's important. And yeah, as soon as the fight was made, both guys signed up immediately.
Well, we're kind of hovering around the subject of drugs or performance-enhancing drugs. Spoke to Thomas Hauser, as I'm sure you know. And he said about potentially a governing or promoters or networks governing on pooling together for money. I know it's something that you've spoken about in the past. Is that realistic for promoters to band together and put money together for extensive year-round drug testing?
I think it's important. I mean, we try and have VADA testing for all major fights. Additional testing I'm talking about, not WBC testing, not UCAD testing, additional money. For extensive and correct VADA testing, you're looking at about 30,000 a fight. All right, it's quite a lot of money. So if you're doing 10 fights on a card, that's 300 grand a show. Now, not everybody needs that, but really, I just feel that in America, the commissions, if you're licensed to a commission, that commission needs to have a random testing program, because the British Boxing Board of Control, through UCAD, has a random testing program. But every commission in America should have the same, but they don't. So no one is getting tested in America. Like, at least British fighters are getting tested by UCAD. No American fighters, unless they sign up to individual VADA testing, are getting tested. It's mental. But it's also very expensive. So I don't know what the answer is, other than we've got to try and make sure that all the major championship fights carry VADA testing, and that's pretty much something that we do.
Is that a problem exclusive to America? I know in the wake of the kind of Dillian White facade, we had Anthony Fowler, Sonny Edwards, etc. come out and say that they're yet to be tested by UCAD. I know Dave Allen wasn't tested before his bout with Lucas Brown.
Well, you don't. He was tested after the fight, but you don't automatic. It's a random testing program, right? So championship fighters get tested frequently by UCAD. Fighters, like some guys come out like, oh, I never got tested. Like, he fought like a Southern area title fight. Like, they can't test everybody. It's very, very expensive. But the championship fighters in major fights from UCAD will be tested consistently. But again, I don't know what the British Boxing Board of Control pay UCAD. It's a lot of money. But the more you pay, the more testing there'll be. But who's going to pay for it in America? I don't mind doing it on our shows, but which universal body is going to come out and say, okay, we'll stick in a couple of million to do testing? If someone come to me and said, stick in 300 or 400 grand and all the other promoters will do the same for annual testing for fighters in America, certainly something we'd look at. I think it's very important.
Will it take somebody kind of going out on a limb and being the first person to put themselves out there for that to happen?
Well, I think that more and more promoters are doing VADA. Like if you speak to VADA, we do more VADA testing than any other promotional company out there. You see it all the time. If you follow VADA on Twitter, they announce when everybody's passed all their tests and they announce when everyone is enrolled. It's a constant flow of our fights coming in. So we're proud of that, and I think it's important. It's difficult to do completely across the board with every fighter.
Back to this card. Charlie Edwards makes a second defence of his WBC World Flyweight title in a dangerous fight against Julio Cesar Martinez. Anyone who knocks out Andrew Selby should be taken seriously. Sure.
Great fight. Styles gel so well. All action. Martinez, of course, became mandatory by knocking out Andrew Selby. That in itself is a very impressive win. He's going to come forward all night. He can really punch. He has good movement. Charlie Edwards has gone from strength to strength, but he's going to have to be at his very best. I think it'll be a brutal fight. I actually see Charlie Edwards winning by stoppage because I think he's going to be perfect. I mean, he'll walk on to Charlie all night. Charlie's just got to be careful. Don't get hit too much by this kid.
After that, you're looking at unifications for Charlie. Yeah, I know the Yafai fight is, again, it'll always be there in the background.
Yeah. I like the Yafai fight. Obviously, it's up at Superfly, but he's going to fight Estrada. I think Charlie has to move to unify after this fight. He really does.
Elsewhere on the card, Josh Buatsi returns to the ring against Ryan Ford. Little known Ryan Ford. One or two people not particularly thrilled about the choice of opponent. Tell me about Ryan Ford.
Tough. Was supposed to fight Yarde actually. I think in his last fight before Kovalev. Not a world beater, and certainly not the level of opposition that's going to gear Buatsi up for a Bivol or a Kovalev, but good, solid, sturdy opponent that we hope will give Buatsi rounds, because that's something that we're lacking at the moment. You know, he's never gone past 6 rounds. And these guys at light heavyweight, they're tough, you know, as you get to the top. And you've got to fight those next level. If you can get through Ford, we really need to find a Sullivan Barrera or a Blake Caparello or, you know, like these kind of top 10 guys who are going to come to fight, survive, go the distance, take him to the trenches, because that's how you prepare for a Kovalev or a Bivol.
Did what we saw in Russia at the weekend just kind of reinforce the point of that need for that kind of in-between fight, what we saw in Russia between Yarde and Kovalev?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Yarde done really well. I mean, I know he didn't win many rounds, but there was a moment in the fight where he looked like he could win the fight. And he has no experience, no championship experience. He's been matched poorly in terms of getting prepared to challenge for a world championship. But Buatsi beats both, in my opinion. Would I put him in with Yarde now? 100%. Would I put him in Kovalev now? I want to get it right with Josh. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to waste what he's got, which is a brilliant talent that could dominate the division. So don't mess it up now and send him to Russia when he's not ready. So after Ford, we need that next step to prepare yourself for the point of no return. Since
the last time I saw you, you've picked up a couple of relatively impressive new signings. Yes. Billy Joe Saunders and Gennady Golovkin. Let's start with Billy Joe Saunders. Was it made all the more sweeter to, I mean, excuse me for kind of putting my hand in the hornet's nest, to prize him away from your British rival?
I don't really look at it like that. When I signed him, I wasn't like, yes, that's one over on Warren. With all due respect, when you look at our two businesses, don't mean to sound arrogant, but like they're chalk and cheese. There's a little thing called Company's House. Go and check it out. And, you know, I don't feel like I need to get one up on Frank. What I do know is that Billy Joe Saunders is top 3, certainly top 5 of the biggest stars in British boxing. And we got him. So in that respect, it was a major signing, not because I took him from Frank, but because it added to our quality of stable. When you look at our stable worldwide, there's never been anything like it. And there's nothing close in terms of the other promotional companies as well. Map it all out. Go to our website and have a look at the talent. And Billy Joe Saunders, on his day, can beat everybody. So I was really pleased. And I like Billy a lot. I know he's a little bit nuts. And, you know, sometimes he says things he shouldn't. But he's got a good heart and he's a very good fighter.
as I understand it, he's going to make his return at 168 pounds and defend his WBO title. Is middleweight realistically where you're going to see the best of him in the future? You've got those big fights with Canelo and Golovkin.
Yeah, and Andrade. And at super middle, you've got, well, I think Danny's going to be up at super middle, so you've got that fight. You've got the Callum Smith fight, which is there to go. And I think the longer he stays at 68, the harder it will be for him to box at 60. But at the moment, I'm being told by the team that either is doable. But right now, he holds a belt at 68, so why not defend it?
Gennady Golovkin is going to challenge for the IBF, the vacant IBF title against Sergey Derevyanchenko, who we've seen box Daniel Jacobs. Talk to me about the deal to get Gennady Golovkin. I mean, as I understand, it's co-promotion with him and Triple G Promotions.
Yeah, I mean, when he signed with DAZN, I set all those meetings up. I flew over there. Then I brought in John Skipper, who's obviously extremely high up at DAZN. And I kind of left them to it. You know, I knew that Triple G Promotions was important to him, but I made it clear to him that I would love to work with him, and I feel like we could bring a lot to the team, but kind of let him get on with it. So he did that deal, and he had his fight with Steve Rolls. We kept talking, the teams kept talking, and he just felt that I could add a huge amount to his career and to Triple G Promotions, staging the events, strategy. It's an honour, really, that a guy like that, I mean, not just a great fighter and a great bloke, but a smart guy, as the choice of anybody in the world, and said, no, I want to like this guy, I want to work with him. So that gives me a great warm feeling and makes me want to go out and deliver for him. So I think the main thing was the Canelo fight wasn't there at the time. So let's stop worrying about other people. Let's take control of your career and let's make the right moves. That first move was going to win the World Middleweight Championship back against Derevyanchenko, then go on from there. And of course, we're our stable, Billy Joe, Callum Smith, Demetrius Andrade, Danny Jacobs. There are 4 fights that can be made like that for him. But the focus is still Canelo, but he won't be hanging around waiting for him.
I was just about to say that. I mean, is it realistic to expect him to go in there with an Andrade, with a Saunders, these tricky customers, or even a Callum Smith at 168, when the Canelo fight, which is going to bring with it more exposure and, more importantly, more money, is on the table? Or is certainly there is a demand for that?
Yeah, but he won't wait. You know, like, Canelo's going to do what he wants to do. He's earned that right, okay? So he's not going to be told who he's fighting. So he's going to have to come out and say, yeah, I'll give the fans Triple G3. If not, all of those other fights, Gennady's at a stage of his career, he's got to take those fights, and he wants to take those fights. So if he can't get Canelo, or Canelo's not forthcoming, all the names you mentioned will be the targets.
Watched your interview yesterday with Coogan, and you were talking about potential pound-for-pound stars, as it were, to add to your stable. I know one that's been heavily rumoured is Mikey Garcia. We've seen the issues between Golden Boy and Canelo. Is that a potential opportunity for yourself there?
Well, obviously, to welcome Canelo to the team would be incredible, but you know, he's with Golden Boy Promotions. We don't interfere with anything that goes on. Who knows what the future will hold? But you know, anybody in the top pound-for-pound list. I mean, Vasily Lomachenko. Love to promote Vasily Lomachenko. Canelo. You know, we've got Usyk, Crawford, Spence. Love to have all those guys as well. Maybe in time we will. But the tough thing now for us is just managing the careers, the expectations, and the schedule of fighters. Like, we've got 3 or 4 guys in the pound-for-pound top 10, definitely top 15, who want to sign with us now that we haven't got, right? But can we give them the dates, you know? And what about the guys whose contracts are up that we've got to look to re-sign? So we've got to look at those fighters. How much are we spending on those fighters? What subscriptions are they delivering? How many bums are they putting on seats? And evaluate our whole stable, because we can't just sign, because we've got to deliver for the business and for DAZN. So we've got to just evaluate who we're going to bring in, who we're not going to re-sign. Maybe some leave. You know, I think everyone's very happy with the service they're getting from DAZN and Matchroom, but maybe we've got to look at what we're spending on certain fighters and saying, you're not delivering. So we've either got to change the financial structure, or you can take another offer, and we'll see where that goes. But you know, Mikey Garcia and a number of other guys shown an interest to come to DAZN, and you know, we want the best stable possible.
What update can you give me on the network for Ruiz-Joshua too? As I understand, it's not heading to DAZN.
No, I mean, it's almost certainly heading to DAZN. Nothing announced yet. Obviously, a little bit of negotiation. As far as I'm concerned, the only place for the fight, you know, is on DAZN. They had the first fight, and they want the second fight, and I'm sure they'll get it.
Are you compromised by the fact that you are so close to DAZN and also promoting Anthony Joshua?
Not really, because I made it quite clear from DAZN from the outset. We'll look at all opportunities for Anthony Joshua. That could be other networks as well, but he's happy with DAZN. He's happy with the financial arrangement, with their input in the first fight, and the fact they want to do this fight as well. So certainly the relationship's much better. It's much easier for me to go in and negotiate and try and get the best deal for AJ, but we don't rule out other networks as far as Anthony Joshua is concerned.
Bit of an interesting time to be an Anthony Joshua fan or a British boxing fan. He's received some interesting feedback, as it were, on his interview with Anna Warhouse. I think general consensus is potentially he may have lost a bit of hunger for the sport. Would you agree with that?
Possibly going into the Ruiz fight, but I think he's got that back since the Ruiz fight. I think he needed that. I think it's interesting to hear him make comments like, I didn't want the Ruiz fight. There was no time where he said to me, I don't want to fight Ruiz. But I think now, knowing how he felt, which was, I wasn't motivated to fight him. I mean, I didn't look at this guy and feel, I want to take your head off. He does now, which is great. And next week's going to be the first time they've looked at each other in the eye since that fight, which I can't wait for. The dynamics changed completely. But AJ in that interview, I thought it was great. I thought it was really real. He spent years trying to be. He's not been a fake. He's just been that responsible role model where he didn't want to say anything controversial. Now he's saying what he thinks about Lennox Lewis. He's saying what he thinks about Ruiz and Wilder and Fury. So you can't have it both ways. Some people have criticised him in the past about not speaking out. Now he speaks out and he's arrogant, or he's not hungry anymore. So,
what do you make of the lucky punch comment?
It's boxing, so obviously the aim is to punch your opponent. So he tried to punch him, and he did punch him. So a better way to phrase it was where he hit him was lucky, because if you watch the fight back, he hit him with a left hook a couple of seconds before, much harder, clean on the chin, and he didn't move, and he hit him above the ear, and it was just a perfect spot. So did Ruiz try and hit him on that spot? No. So that was lucky. But obviously, in boxing, you're trying to punch your opponent.
Same interview also saw Anthony talk about adding people to his camp as opposed to removing them, which is something that we've spoken about. Does that kind of all but confirm that we'll be bringing somebody into the camp for the rematch?
Again, that's one for the training team. I'm not really involved in those discussions. I wouldn't be surprised, but if he does, it will be brought in through Rob McCracken. Rob McCracken is the leader of the camp. AJ's made it very clear about his loyalties to Rob. And yeah, if Rob feels that's what's needed, that will happen.
Final one on all things Ruiz-Joshua 2. Make sure I get that the right way around.
Yeah.
It's seemingly dying down a little bit, would you agree? Kind of the negativity towards certainly the choice of location for the rematch,
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's just how it works. Everything dies down, doesn't it, as days pass. We'll still get stick leading up, but we know what we're doing. We knew what the response we were going to get. We were very happy with the people behind the event in Saudi Arabia, the logistics. We've been there. The team went last week. In fact, logistically and on a professional sense, levels above in the UK, levels above. They've got such huge plans for sport and entertainment in Saudi, and we're now part of that, and boxing is a part of that. In fact, since we made this deal, a number of other promoters have been on the phone to people in Saudi trying to do the same. Other regions have been on to me. Can we stage an event there as well? It's about to get very interesting in the world of boxing. New region now, who are going to be heavily investing in the sport.
What do you say to fans who look at it as financially being the biggest lure, as it were, the financial side of things? I think a lot of fans, rightly or wrongly, would have probably taken it a bit better if you said that they came out and produced the best financial deal.
Well, they didn't. So there was...
Who did, out of interest?
I'm not going to tell you, but there was other countries that produced a better financial deal. But we were more comfortable with the people we were dealing with in Saudi. We'd spoken to them before, we'd dealt with them before. I went to the World Boxing Super Series final. Amir Khan just boxed out there. There is a commission, there is an infrastructure, and that's what we went for. So, of course, financially it was a great deal. If it wasn't, we wouldn't be going to Saudi Arabia. But there are other reasons as well. And Joshua wants to box all over the world. It was a neutral venue. That was a massive kicker at the time when we were arguing with Ruiz. We spoke to Ruiz about it, his team, and I said it's London or Saudi. How do you feel about that? I said we'd much rather Saudi. So we did that. But yeah, of course, fine. I mean, that's every fighter. I'm not going to go to a fighter and say, do you want to go to Saudi to fight? And the deal's not very good, but what do you think?
What was the kind of the final kicker? I know the fight was initially signed, the rematch clause, before the first fight, but there was a delay, certainly from Andy Ruiz's side of the team, with coming out and quote-unquote confirming the fight was on. I know the fight is quote-unquote on from the first fight, but what was the kicker? Did you sweeten the deal? What happened?
Yeah, there was a few things that he had to do that we wanted him to do commercially that he didn't have to do under the contract that he signed. Minor stuff. Saudis, appearances, press conferences, signing things, whatever. So we compensated him for that financially, which was good because that's what he was after all along. And we answered his questions that were important questions: security, commission, drug testing, travel. So once we did all that, obviously legally we had to make sure that we enforced our contract, which we're in the process of doing. And eventually they come together with us and said, okay, we're comfortable, let's do it.
Rumble in the Jungle, Thriller in Manila. Who came up with the clash on the dunes?
Saudi Arabia.
Really?
Don't mind it. Rowdy and Saudi was another one, you know. No, I think that it's historic with them because the fight will take place, you know, amongst the sand dunes in the desert. So this will go down in history along with those events. And people say, oh, what are you talking about? Trust me, wait till you see. The whole world will stop to watch this fight on December 7th.
Okay, well, just before I go, seeing that you've been doing very well with your podcast. I saw yesterday
They
with...
moved it though, I've noticed. So the Kano the Kano podcast was the #1 podcast for under 35-year-olds on the entire BBC platform. But they moved me from sport to current affairs and culture or something like that. So it's quite funny because I go on this podcast thing and it's got the charts, right? So when I release an episode, I go on the charts and I've been like in sport for ages and I've been like top 5, top 10. And then I did the Kano one. I was like, mate, I'm not. It goes down to 200. I wasn't even in the top 200. Then I went to society and culture. That's it. I was top 3.
All about the culture. When are you coming on the Boxing Social podcast? You told me you were going to come on it.
Still going?
Well, we're going to start it up again. We've moved office, but are you going to come on it?
Don't you think the hard thing to do with a podcast is continuously churn them out on time?
Well, it didn't help that we moved office and our studio was in our office.
You have
But
an office?
yes,
Wow.
you should come down and come on the podcast. Surely.
Ooh. Very impressive.
You haven't said yes or no yet.
I will, yeah. When I've got time.
When?
2021? No.
Eddie Hearn, thanks very much for speaking to Boxing
The thing about
Social.
podcasts is you can do it anywhere. We could have. Can't you put this on the podcast?
No.
Why?
Because this
You actually can.
The time or the place.
Yeah, but you actually can.
I don't want to.
Okay.
Thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social, Ed.
Cheers. Thank you.
Oh.